Zach,
Aubrey, what's up?
what's going on, man?
Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Good to see you.
Pleasure to have you.
Thanks.
Yeah, This is good.
Very cool.
So I got to start off with this question.
Yeah.
What's it like growing up with a big last name?
Well, I mean, it's ebbed and flowed over the years, I mean, as I get older, I think I settle into it more, When I was younger, especially as a young adult, when my dad was still around, it was all I knew in the sense that that was my identity. I didn't really have my own identity. Everything I knew.
You were Timothy Leary's son.
Yeah. And when he was around, just like, my friends were automatic, girlfriends were automatic, work was automatic. It just came with the bubble, so I didn't really know about the real world until he died. And then when he died, it's sort of like everything kind of evaporated with that. It's like the phone didn't keep ringing sort of thing. And, that's a strange phenomenon for sure. And at the beginning, in my mid-20s, that was it's difficult to sort of navigate my own way through life and find my own
And how old were you
identity.
when your dad died?
I was 22.
22.
Yeah. And from 22 to about 25 was really rough, really dark and lost and confused. But yeah, and once I sort of found out who I was,
Right.
then having the big last name was something I embraced a lot more. It's something that I feel it's a compliment or something I'm proud of, but I try not to let it define me.
Sure.
So yeah, I mean,
Yeah, I think that's probably the right attitude towards it, right? Like embrace it, have love for what is,
yes,
and not try to go the other direction just to be different, and fight against it as resistance.
I did try that for a while. Yeah,
right. That's
I did.
probably a natural tendency to rebel against it, right?
I had a corporate America life for a minute, kind of wearing khakis and button-down shirts to the office every day, and was far, far away from any smell of the psychedelic community. I just really, for that reason, it was just something I needed just to kind of get away from and sort of find my own path. But that wasn't my path, as I found out anyway. Right. It was an interesting experience.
Well, now though.
Now I know.
That's always good.
Now I know.
So give us some insight on, your perspective. Obviously, this is someone that a lot of people know some things, in some cases, a lot of things about. But what's your perspective, from the inside, really knowing him on an intimate level?
With Timothy himself? Yeah. Well, and it's actually a good time to kind of ask me that question because for the first time ever, I'm in the middle of kind of putting together a documentary project based on his life that's using the book on tape he made of his autobiography as the narration bed. And it's something we're really excited about.
Cool.
And we hadn't really thought about that before until a few months ago. So yeah, I've been spending a lot of time examining him and how I remember him and all the facets, he was, I mean, simply put, he was the smartest guy in the room, always. I mean, he was truly, truly brilliant, so brilliant and so elevated with his just, his cognitive capacity, his cognitive ability to take a thought and run with it and sort of look at every angle and every permutation of that thought and that idea that, it was very hard for people to keep up with him. So he didn't really have too many close friends, I would say. And he had some, but, he wasn't like that kind of guy. He didn't really have buddies,
Right.
he hung out with, because he was just lost in his work. He was lost in the ideas. So he was incredibly driven, incredibly kind of self-aware of what he was doing, which I'm finding to be a really fascinating little aspect of him. I mean, he was really self-aware of the work he was doing and why it was important. Not too many people are. You kind of do your work and, maybe you're proud of it, maybe you're not, but you're not really looking at your legacy. But he was really aware of what he was trying to do. So his life was his work. He had an incredible work ethic, incredible discipline. He was born in 1920. And from 1920 until 1960, he was an academic. He went to West Point, so he had a little dabbled in the military for a second, got his PhD, was at UC Berkeley and then at Harvard, so from his first 40 years, he was really, a driven, disciplined, somewhat straight-laced academic.
And then he took psychedelics.
And the whole world just blew up.
Really opened up.
Yeah, simultaneously, a lot of things happened. His whole mind opened up, and his whole, relationship with his own ego opened up. But the world was also changing at the same time. So it was kind of like this beautiful.
Yeah, he was a microcosm for what was happening universally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's. Did you guys, was that something that was discussed openly when you were young? I think at what age did he start talking to you about psychedelics? And what age did you guys start doing them together?
He started talking to me about psychedelics when he knew I was doing them and I was too young to be doing them.
So how young was that?
About 14. Uh-huh. I was a deadhead. And I was really, really immersed in Grateful Dead culture. And, at that time that's what came with it. But yeah, I always like to make clear and really point out that he was not for indiscriminate youth use. He really was like, you're too young, wait, you'll understand when you're older. Wait till your mind is a little bit more solid. Wait till your body is, gone through all of its transformations, so on and so forth. But the wheels kind of fell off on that until I was about 16. And then we had a relationship in the psychedelic world together. Yeah.
That's something that, I've been fortunate enough to share with my parents as well.
And it's cool.
It's pretty special when you get to cross those generational gaps and, enter that space with your family, and it's, I remember doing ayahuasca the first time with my mom and,
oh, wow.
Seeing her across there. And it's just a wild experience when you get to do that. And it really feels like that's the way it should be, like this should be a ritual that's brought into the family, like father and son, mother and daughter, like let's go experience this together, the whole family together, like the whole family taking MDMA together the night before Thanksgiving. It'd be a hell of a better turkey day, plus you got the 5-HTP from the turkey and the gravy. You're replenishing your brain on the backside. I'm calling it out. Family tradition coming on. Yes. MDMA ceremony night before Thanksgiving. Game changer.
And it was, this was a tribal ritual that everyone in the tribe took part in, right? Yeah. When we were in kind of tribal cultures and, everybody did it. Your dad might've been the shaman of the village. Who knows? But it was something that was brought in, right? At an early age. Were your parents, did they grow up counterculture at all? Or?
Not really. So my dad actually, he was the one who was into it first, and he met Stan Groff early on, and he was just trying to basically solve his own mental problems. This was a way of him trying to get out of the hell that he'd created in his own mind. And he tried a bunch of different things, from the breath work to primal therapy to traditional therapy to everything. And eventually psychedelic therapy was the thing that kind of cracked the nut and really opened him up.
Wow.
And so he eventually then set up something where I could go on my own vision quest when I was out of high school. So I didn't do it with him the first time, but it was like a traditional vision quest, psilocybin out in the mountains. And that was where my whole world kind of opened up. And, thinking back, like, I actually don't think I ever did psychedelics with my dad, but we would talk about them all the time. And we did all of them separately, but never together, which is kind of interesting. It's kind of a shame that we never really got to drop into that space together, but I have with my mom, and that was pretty special. And then my younger sister as well, who was in the ayahuasca documentary that I filmed. And that was incredibly special too.
Amazing. Yeah. And I'm just so glad to hear stories like this, because it's seeing the fabric change and, the stigma and sort of the preconceived, and also the generation gap is shrinking. The generation gap in the 60s, that's why a huge reason why the 60s was so powerful, because it was so different than the 50s.
Yeah.
And if you were a hippie 18-year-old, 16-year-old kid in 1967. Your parents were World War II generation, white picket fence. They didn't so that it was such a huge disparity. Now that it's shrinking, I mean, sort of reigniting these traditions like that is super, super important.
Yeah. And I see this actually happening quite a bit with people in my generation and even a little bit younger, where they're now armed with the research coming out of places like MAPS and Hefter, and they're going back to their parents and saying, hey, I know you heard a bunch of shit about psychedelics. Not true. Here's the research. Here's the results. Here's the phase 2 clinical trials. Right. Let's try this again. And sometimes the expression is like, there's a little bit of fear, like, well, I don't know, getting old. I don't know if my heart can take it, or there's a few things like that. But but more and more, I'm hearing people are like, all right, screw it. Like, let's give it a go. Like that was an amazing experience for me back then. But then, somehow they allowed fear and comfort and all these different things to steer them away from that path. And now I think our generation is kind of helping steer them back into it. And great books like Michael Pollan's book, How to Change Your Mind. You read that book and you really start to understand, all right, this is not the picture that has been painted in the culture. And that's really starting to shift.
Yeah, everything is wrong for sure. Yeah, Michael's book. It's number 3 on the New York Times bestseller list.
He's a monster.
It's just amazing.
It's amazing, yeah.
Yeah, it really is. And I mean, we've known this all along.
Well,
and I've known
after I did my first psychedelic, I didn't know shit before I did it. You know what I mean? Like, it's one of these things, like, you got to feel it and taste it and touch it.
You do.
To really know it. But it's great that we have the research now, because that's something that can help people when they're ready.
Yeah.
Really consider it.
Yeah. I mean, the experiential quality is, of course, the most important thing. Really knowing it and tasting it and feeling it and stuff like that.
It'd be like trying to comment on sex having never had sex.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like everybody trying to comment on psychedelics. It's the funniest when like neuroscientists and stuff are commenting on psychedelics who've never taken it. I'm like, stop. Just stop. Like, what are you doing? This is insane. Take it first and then I'll listen to you.
It's funny. I've always kind of found and thought that there really haven't been too many people to articulate the psychedelic experience in its like complete glory. I think that's what made Terence McKenna so amazing.
Right. Yeah.
He could articulate the unarticulatable.
Yeah, talk about the ineffable.
Talk about the ineffable. Talk about that space that goes beyond language, no question. And yeah, today with all of this data at hand and all of this great work that's being done, I can't believe it. I'm stunned. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's by far the richest, most, diverse and fertile time in my lifetime.
Yep. And it couldn't come a minute too soon. This is now, it really feels like we need major allies to shift opinion. And it's not just one side of the political spectrum or the other side. Everybody is creating factions and fighting each other and lobbing hate back and forth. And it's this
and fear
and hate and fear. And this division, this false separation that gets immediately collapsed the moment you take a hard opening psychedelic like MDMA or a consciousness expanding psychedelic like ayahuasca or the right LSD or psilocybin. Like all of these things, it all just collapses and fade away, and you get back to that substrate of love and connection. Yes. That is the baseline of all humanity, and you don't care about your political identity and your social identity. Right. This is a fellow human living on planet Earth. So you're team human, team Earth, team animal. Let's go, and that's exactly what we need.
And the world is getting smaller. Yeah. It is. We have to understand these core concepts, these core threads that connect us and bind us and, will continue to shape us. And, and what's so great about the data and this shifting of culture too in the psychedelic community is even if you are on the other side of the fence, I'm just playing devil's advocate. It's so cool to see a lot of people sort of like acquiescing to, well, we have much bigger problems to deal with. Like fighting a war on drugs that includes psilocybin and LSD. It's just, we have so many bigger problems to deal with. So it's cool to see, the cannabis and, I really do think cannabis in California is, the first major step.
Yeah.
In, you know, even people on the other side of the fence going, okay, you know, we have much bigger issues. Let's move on.
Right.
Safety, efficacy, you know, set and setting, instructions, data. Let's move on. Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely that feeling. Yeah. And then there's still some of those people who know that they're, you know, they've built this false world of their shadow and their ego.
And they'll be found out. They will, man.
And I think it's they're regulating against their own fear. You know, I think a lot of people hypothesize this great conspiracy, like they're trying to keep culture down. And of course, there's probably a little bit of that, you know, and if you look at kind of some of the marijuana laws in the 60s and the voting rights for African Americans, there's some fuckery going on around there. But I think for the most part, people are scared of psychedelics.
Yeah.
And how do you keep those from even being an option? Well, you regulate against them. You know, you support all the things that would make them impossible for you to even have the option to do them.
Yeah.
You know, so you're just pushing them away as much as you can. And I really think that's what's going on. You know, people are afraid that if this is an option, maybe they'll have to look at their own shit.
I mean, Nixon called my dad the most dangerous man in America. I mean, it's like you can't even trying to get your head around that.
Did your dad have a good laugh when that came out?
I mean,
it might have been kind of stressful.
Yeah, it was kind of stressful. I mean, he went to prison and had to deal with all of that and escaped and came back. And I mean, it was quite a bit of a headache, but it supports, I mean, the
fear. He's laughing now.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Nixon's fear of counterculture, of independent thinking, of self-actualization, of millions of people, you know, taking something that could question this false reality that, you know, they're piecing together around us was legitimate. That
and
was
piecing together himself. I mean, you look at somebody who needs to do psychedelics more than anybody. It's that fucker.
It sure is.
Like for sure needed it the most.
Yeah.
So who's going to be the most vehemently opposed to it? The person who needs it the most, you know?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I mean, not to get into a policy discussion here, but so far so good with this administration and the current psychedelic work.
Weird. And yeah,
great.
It's like
I was nervous.
Yeah, it's like they just don't give any fucks about it.
Yeah,
it's not like particularly pro.
They'd rather build the wall. Yeah, exactly.
They'd rather just spew nonsense about nonsense and figure it out from there. But that's been one of the kind of weird kind of everything's going ahead really well. Like talking to MAPS about the relations with the FDA, talking to everything that's going on. Like they're not finding that big external pressure that I think probably a lot of us were like, it's going to come, you know, be ready for it. It's going to come. Well, it hasn't really come yet. You know, it's the science is running its course and everything is going along as planned. And, you know, people are more worried about, you know, what gender they're calling themselves and whatever else and just leaving this, like the important issues alone, which is great.
Yeah. Well, you know, I mean, the thing with, you have to remember with government and issues that are, you know, directly related to the government or tangentially related to the government, you know, 95%, or I don't know what the number is, but 95% of the government, you know, these people are career employees. They don't come and go with the administrations, you know, so like the people in the FDA, the administration is somewhat irrelevant.
Yeah.
You know, they come and go. Sure, they could change the direction of it and everything like that, but these are career bureaucrats, you know, and there's enough of them on our side who see this now.
That's huge.
It's huge. Yeah. And just seeing what, you know, how some of these veterans are responding to the MDMA work and seeing how cancer patients with end of life anxiety are truly having, you know, real world breakthroughs. I mean, you can't argue with that.
It can't be underestimated, the effect that this is going to have.
Yeah.
You know, and I think people, you know, generally in the public, if you haven't really experienced or been in the room and seen some of this happen, you know, I've been fortunate to be in MDMA assisted psychotherapy sessions that are, you know, they're going on underground now, and it's unfortunate, but you know, when people really need it, you know, there's a few brave souls who've stepped up, and I've been fortunate enough to be invited to go watch these places and to see it actually happen. It's fucking mind blowing. And to see that person go in one person and come out another person. I mean, I've seen it in ayahuasca ceremonies and different other traditional ceremonies, but in that very clinical approach that MAPS has developed, and with very precise milligram dosage and a very precise playlist and a very precise protocol, and to watch that work as well as it does, I mean, it's probably the most healing and transformative thing I've seen. I mean,
It's amazing.
Just tons and tons of weight of childhood abuse and trauma and any kind of PTSD. All of these things just starts pouring out and going through, accessing the anger, and then to the ultimately to the love and the forgiveness, and watching this whole arc happen in a day. And and then come out and be like, I can't believe this. I've tried everything. I've tried EMDR. I've tried all of the things to try to get to the root of this. And this one session did more than the last 20 years of therapy that I've been trying to do.
It's amazing, isn't it? And so what do you think? I mean, looking back on it, because I do think it's a good case study and discussion worth having. It's like, so what happened in the 60s that was the element or the fabric or the stitch that wasn't able to sort of transform the world around us? Because in the 60s, more people did LSD in a short time period than ever before. I mean, millions and millions and millions of people did LSD, from 1963 to 1970. Like, it was just so massive. But yet, it didn't really, the whole sort of age of Aquarius, the whole vision didn't really manifest. And I like just to isolate the discussion to try to find out why. What is it that we can learn from that? Because so we can do better this time.
I mean, I think Rick Doblin articulates this a lot when he talks, and it's probably, the most valid criticism of your dad's message was the dropout component.
Yeah, and that was also misunderstood. But
I'd like to hear your opinion on that. But I think it was also this, and it wasn't just obviously your dad, but I think there was this idea that we're separate. Like, this is our team and this is their team. And when you create that sense of tribalism, then it creates conflict between that. And then the stronger tribe will ultimately overrun the other tribe because they won't see you as same, right? And so it created this environment of tribalism, this kind of idea like, okay, we're the counterculture, you're the culture, we're going to be on other sides of the picket. And I think whenever you have that, it's going to ultimately resolve with one side overrunning the other, one tribe overrunning the other tribe. Right. And it's just the nature of the beast. Whereas this time, what I think is brilliant on the map side is they went straight for, the military, the first responders and the troops, which is squarely in the other camp. And it's almost this inarguable population. And it's already building those bridges of commonality. Like, hey, we're helping the soldiers. Yes. And so it's like, it's this kind of thing like, oh, who's us and who's them? Is it the soldier? Well, the soldiers are us, but then the people helping the soldiers are also us.
It erases that conversation.
It erases the conversation. Yeah. So it's all blended.
Yeah.
And so you can't point to who's who anymore. Like, who am I? Am I culture or counter? I don't know.
Right.
And who are you? Like, you don't know anymore. And when you don't know anymore, then you can see everybody as same, and then you can support the movement.
Yeah. I mean, that is a great point and well articulated. I mean, the us and them mentality of the 60s, of course. I mean, it was an intense time, though, for sure. Mm-hmm. Civil rights and the war in Vietnam. And there was, you did have to respond in such a manner. I mean, this isn't my war. I'm not going over to Vietnam to fight it, so you were them or us, whatever it is. Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting to see that. But at the same time, it's also such challenging work. And I find it to be challenging work on a personal level and on a psychedelic level and a spiritual level to remain in that place of acceptance and, I guess, of kind of unconditional love in a way.
Yeah. Well, that's a good thing we have the psychedelics to help us get there.
It is.
Because it'd be super hard without it.
Yeah, it is so hard because you do look at, say the current administration for a minute and you're like, oh my God. I mean, because they are so different. They're so, antithetical to everything we believe in that it's hard to kind of hold them in this place of compassion. And we have to.
You have to.
We have to. I mean, it's
only love that ends the conflict. Yeah. And it's like, anytime you're throwing rocks, you can expect rocks back.
Bigger rocks.
rocks.
Yeah.
This is going to be, until you really just take a few blows and still show up with love, that's the only thing that ends it.
Yeah.
Ever. And that's the real courage. That's how you look at the people who've really shaped history, like Gandhi and Martin Luther King. And that's the move. You take the blows and you show up still in
anyway.
love. And then people stop swinging.
This documentary, King in the Wilderness, it's an new HBO documentary called King in the Wilderness. It's about his sort of the final years, the final days, and his sort of his personal kind of state of mind and how things were like, the night before he died, he gave the speech in Memphis, kind of acknowledging that
Didn't have long.
Yeah, that he didn't have long. But he didn't, just like you were saying, I've seen the promised land, Mm-hmm. I may not get there with you, but I've seen the promised land and it's going to be okay. And just staying in that place and just so heroic.
Yeah.
So heroic.
Yeah, that's true courage, and it's the thing that...
It's true courage and it's true believing in your own shit, believing in what you're preaching.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's vibrational accord with your message.
Yeah.
Like this idea like, I'm going to fight for peace. What do you mean you're going to fight for peace? Like be peace. If you want peace.
Right, just be peace.
Draw peace to you as peace if you want peace. Like you don't go bombing for peace. Like that's just not, It doesn't work. I mean, maybe bomb for protection or whatever. Like I'm not saying never bomb, like I'm not saying if someone breaks into your house, you can't defend yourself or whatever. There's always going to be circumstances. But if you really are about peace,
be peace.
Be peace.
Yes, right. Like Gandhi, be the change you want to see in the world. Yeah, and it's funny, and I never was this person. I never really believed this traditionally and historically in my life, but that, I still believe that psychedelics aren't for everyone.
I agree.
But at the same time, these days, I'm kind of shifting more towards the side of like, well, I don't know. I think these guys should open up to it.
I would say psychedelics aren't for everyone, but MDMA is an exception.
MDMA is an exception, yeah. And I got this from the vets and the
I really feel like this is a universal human drug.
Yeah.
Like this is the thing that corrects. Like if you had to, it would be a real shame if you had to take all the other psychedelics. If I could make a trade and say, okay, all the psychedelics in the world, they go away, they disappear. But everybody gets access and takes a session of MDMA.
Yeah.
Okay. I'd cry some tears, letting all my, favorite teachers go. But like that is the one that I think shifts humankind the most because it opens the heart, and the heart's where we store all our fear, and it's where we produce all our delusions of separation, and it just collapses all of that.
It shatters all that. Yeah.
Elegant and comfortable way. It's not a terrifying reliving of your own death, and it doesn't typically spiral you, off into these strange dimensions where you're talking to someone with an alligator head.
Yeah.
Like that can be unnerving.
That can be unnerving, and you do see, people who are really hard, what we thought were hardwired into cultural differences that were so deep. I mean, guys who went to war, who wanted to go to war. Not only went to, who wanted to go to war. That was their choice because they believed in.
Yeah, there's no draft anymore.
There's no draft anymore.
If you're at war, you wanted to go to war.
Yeah, and so you're really kind of seeing just the fabric of their being change. It's a little bit like the astronaut effect. Pretty much. NASA, I think kind of keeps a lot of the stories quiet, but pretty much, every astronaut who went up into space, these guys are military guys, fighter pilots, and and Air Force and stuff like that. And nearly everyone came back a pacifist, came back, seeing the love, seeing the need for compassion, seeing the need for tolerance.
I wonder if it's just seeing the earth as one thing.
You're just seeing it, looking down.
Seeing the earth as one thing and not seeing any dividing lines and borders. And it's
you
just
don't see
like
any of that shit.
Just clouds and ocean and rain and the people and plants and animals that live on this fucking beautiful planet.
And it's all us. It's all the
all
same,
us.
And I just love those stories. Jim Lovell was, his stories are the best about it. I mean, he was really, really vocal about it. But I kind of feeling it's a little, the MDMA thing, it's similar. It could change the most hardened heart,
Yep.
The most fear-based, rigid, totalitarian heart that you thought could not be ripped open. It could change it.
I mean, like Trump might need like a 350 milligram dose, but like,
and maybe more than one dose.
But at I'd love to see that dude on 350 milligrams and just give him a hug. Just give him a big old hug. I mean, it's an irresistible thing, and it'd be it comes with the pain of reconciliation, but you're able to look at your shit in such a loving way.
Yeah.
Like in such a way that it doesn't hurt so much. It's not. you just have that overwhelming feeling of positivity and love and safety and security, and you're identified as the highest version of yourself. And looking back, you're like, oh man, look at me, look what I did. Oh, poor guy, or and you just see it from a different perspective.
Yeah, see yourself from a different perspective. All those mistakes you make in life, all those things, you could just have so much compassion for it. So where does that leave us with the recreational issue? So I'm just finding this a lot. I mean, I think I don't know if it's the most common correspondence I get from doing the MAPS podcast, but are people asking about, well, where does the recreational discussion lie now? Mm-hmm. Because we're seeing the medical frontiers. They're amazing. There's no question. Yeah. But, the cognitive liberty discussion hasn't really been had yet because it's probably too soon. The phase 3 trials aren't done yet. But we have to start kind of developing a position on it.
Well, ultimately, regulating against the sovereignty of someone to modulate their own consciousness is madness.
It's madness.
It's madness. And I think no one elucidates that better than Graham Hancock. You hear him go on a little rant about the sovereignty of your consciousness. And it is not possible that we can have a awakened society in which we throw people in cages for modulating their own thoughts and emotions. Yes. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? We'll look back at that and it'll be as barbaric as, shock therapy.
Yeah.
And lobotomies where they stick an ice pick and, through people's brain, or institutional racism, or like all these things that were like, whoa, that was barbaric. Did we really do that? And we'll think back to throwing people in cages for doing something to their own self.
Well, and not only that, but there's also, it's not consistent. I mean, you can't say there's a war on drugs when you can go buy Jack Daniels and get a prescription for OxyContin. Right. I mean, the biggest epidemic in America right now is a legal drug. It's a prescription drug. So the modulating your consciousness, it's only on some drugs. It's only on some things, right. So there's no consistent discussion.
It makes no sense.
It makes no sense. Yeah.
So ultimately it has to lead to legalization. But I think, I'm not even that stressed about that, because once we have doctors and practitioners able to provide it, and this is going to be, and the way that it's going to come about, it's just going to be rad. There's going to be places on the lake and places in the mountains and places in the desert, and like all of these incredible experiential opportunities to go do this medicine in a guided setting, because it's in the guided setting that it's really powerful anyways. Like, I've done MDMA quite a few times on my own, that's fun, whatever. But it's not the same as a session with the blindfold and the headphones and and guided. It's like a fraction, because you're perceiving everything internally instead of the externally, instead of perceiving everything internally.
It's true.
And it's there's other applications. I think in couples therapy it can be incredible, but all these things will start to develop, and then the off-label practices and relationship counseling, where it's not just, that's originally where MDMA started, right?
Yeah.
That's going to come back online, and so I'm just so excited about that.
All the new professions too. I mean, there's going to be a legitimate specialized form of psychotherapy around psychedelic psychotherapy. Institutions are going to start including that as a specialized field. Yeah, that is so cool.
So cool.
That is so cool. I mean, you imagine you're going for your PhD, you don't know what to specialize in. Oh, maybe I'm thinking of, Jungian, depth psychology. Oh, psychedelic therapy. Huh. Interesting. That's an amazing, amazing thing to see.
It's incredible. And to think that it's so close, that it's potentially 2021, 2022, somewhere around there.
It is so close. But the reason I asked the question about the cognitive liberty and the recreational discussion is because even if we get to that place, and we will, where therapeutic MDMA sessions are legal and possible, that's not going to eliminate, all of that. Sure. So, especially with MDMA, the purity thing is such an issue for me. Every time I hear a horror story about MDMA, it's always a purity thing. Nobody knows what they're taking. So just finding ways to alleviate that.
Yep.
Yeah. Because
that's ultimately, legalization does a hell of a job alleviating that.
Yeah.
Who's smoking fake weed now? Nobody's smoking fake weed. Why? Because you can go to the store and get good ass weed. You don't smoke fake weed anymore. There's no market for it. It's no
market for swag anymore.
When there's going to be no more bath salts? When you can get MDMA. That's when bath salts go away entirely.
There's not even swag anymore, is there?
No,
Right? It
it's
doesn't
just
even
fucking
exist, does it?
great kind ass bud everywhere. Smells like fucking tangerines or grapes or skunks. I don't know. It's amazing.
God damn, is it strong? Man, I don't smoke grass anymore, but the last time I did, I was that guy. I officially became that guy, where it's, oh my God, back when I was your age, Jesus, so fucking strong, We'd roll a joint, we'd smoke the whole thing. Now it's, geez. I became that guy. It's so funny. But that's funny. I just, the purity and we're just regulating that's a really important topic for me. And I just want to make sure that the two worlds are still talking to each other.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. And I think really this whole abstinence concept, where like, let's just pretend it's not happening. Let's pretend the kids aren't going to fuck. So let's not teach them anything about sex.
Yeah.
Like that has been proven over and over to be a failure.
Yeah.
So like what needs to happen is to just understand that people are going to fuck and they're going to do drugs.
Yes.
So let's talk to them about fucking and doing drugs.
Yes.
And let's really educate them with people who aren't like all stiff and have never really done either. Like, I don't want to learn how to fucking do drugs from my fucking school teacher. I want to learn how to do that from an expert.
Right.
Like someone who's really gotten in there in the shit, Yes. And like knows what's up. And like, all right, here's where you got to look out for dehydration. Here's the things that do not mix. Do not do these things in combination. Here's the things, if you must, you could probably mix them. Probably not the wisest idea. Like some real talk, It's like some real talk about what to do. Like, okay, here's what you do. Here's how you know if it's real. Here's how you know if it's not real.
Yeah.
Here's what you're going to expect for the hangover. Here's what you're going to expect for this. This is how to do it safely. Like some real talk, and just collapse all of this. We better not talk about it. It's because it's going to do it. No, it's not. Just not talking about it just makes people do it worse.
Yeah, and it makes people, and statistically proven too, it makes people do it worse, but it also makes a large portion of the population want to do it. Yeah. Because you're telling them not to.
Yeah.
When you're seeing what's going on in Portugal, the second that they decriminalized everything, I mean, not the second, but over the course of however many years or months, the overall consumption of narcotics went down. Yeah.
Guess who drinks the most from ages 18 to 21 in the world? I don't know. The only country that's illegal to drink until you're 21? Us.
Right.
We're fucking bitch drinking machines.
Tell someone not to do it.
Tell me again.
Yeah.
Tell me again. You drink that whole fucking 24 pack and smash it on my head. Like that's what I'm going to do, you dummy. It just doesn't work. We're not pragmatic with these rules and these laws that we make. We're not actually doing the most good. We're just pretending that we have the best intentions. Well, that's the road to hell. That aphorism is true. The road to hell is paved with good intentions because it is. We're just creating hell.
We're creating hell, and we're creating just a system of people who are not wanting to talk about difficult issues.
And also don't trust the government. Don't trust the police. Like people hate, there's this natural feeling of like, oh, fuck the cops.
Yeah.
Because the cops have to enforce a bunch of stupid laws. Because they're running around chasing me in the woods as I'm trying to drink from my keg in high school. So like I fucking hate the cops from the start.
Yeah.
And like that shouldn't be it.
Yeah.
Because when you love the cops when you're actually in danger.
Yeah.
Like we got our house robbed when we were in California. Like they tried to steal some equipment from our backyard and it was fucking scary. And when we saw those blue and reds, we're like, woohoo, thank God the fucking police are here.
Yeah.
Right. And that's how it should be. And it's like, oh my God, I feel safe now that you're here.
Yeah.
And that's the feeling we should have to the police. But when they have to enforce these crazy laws and trying to bust us for having weed and, drinking when we're 19 years old and, busting into our house for having fun, like, then it creates this antagonistic relationship with authority.
Yeah. And that's another, I think, important part of what we were talking about earlier about the eroding the us and them culture.
Yeah.
Because I'm the first to admit still when I see a cop car pull up behind me. I mean, it all flashes through my head.
Totally.
Everything that happened in the past, it's like, oh my God, the fucking, and I don't want to live in a world like that.
No,
you don't want to live in this totalitarian.
No, it should be like, oh, sweet, the cops are here.
Yeah,
I love the cops.
Or that they're at least. Oh man, I mean, you're such an optimist. I mean, that's awesome. But at least, hey, they're not bad people. It's not the pigs. It's like it's going to be okay.
It should be like, like if you're in a nightclub and like your homie who's a great fighter shows up, and like he's on your team and you're just like, sweet. Like I got one of my boys here now. Like we got the good guys here.
Yeah.
Like that's ultimately what it should be, and it should be this. And I think it's just it's that kind of factioning, cops seeing everybody as a criminal because that's what they're trained to do.
Right.
They're trained to find, just look and perceive the world as everybody. And my stepdad was a cop, and he talks about this too. Like you're literally trained to see everyone as a criminal and figure out how they're being a criminal and what they're doing. And that's their lens of perception. So as they look at you through that lens of perception, you're reading that and you're like, what are you doing, man? I'm fucking just being me. And then you're looking at them as the prosecutor or persecutor and judge. And it's this weird dynamic that ultimately is unhealthy.
Yeah. I used to know somebody who was on-site staff therapist, psychologist for the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. He worked in the jails as a therapist for the deputies, not for the inmates, for the deputies. And as much as he liked his job and really helped a lot of people, he did kind of have the feeling that, well, these guys and the criminals and the inmates are basically the same person. One just happens to be on the other side of the fence.
Yeah.
Total like indiscriminate karma. But they're kind of the same makeup, looking for trouble, looking to be the man, looking to beat down on someone. They just get to do it with a badge,
Yeah. I mean, if you were in a smaller tribal environment, like the warriors who would be charged with enforcing, certain laws, like you're stoked when they're around.
Right.
Like you're just stoked.
Right.
And that's, I think, the way it should be, and I think it's very rare and how toxic for these police officers and military and people that they so rarely get to be the hero, because I think a lot of it, maybe there are some drives to power and drives, some other egoic kind of darker side motivations. But I think most of the time people who sign up to be cops or soldiers, they just want to be a hero. Yeah. They're just trying to be a hero, but instead the wars that they're put in and the situations that they're put in the laws that they have to enforce, they're not able to be a hero because they're fucking with normal people.
And I do believe that they do want to do good.
I really believe that.
I think so. And I think it's the same with politicians. There are a lot of people who go into politics who genuinely think that, I can make a difference here. Then they just get sucked up into the system and then they lose that really, really quick.
Wow. I'm so biased because I was just on this whole tirade about how cops and military have that heroic mentality. You mentioned politicians. I'm like, fucking bloodsuckers. I go immediately judgmental. It's funny.
I heard the story on NPR. I can't remember if they were just talking about a specific place or if it was in general, but that gearing up in the midterms for these elections coming up in November, there are more people under the age of 35 running for Congress than ever before.
That's cool.
Yeah. I mean, there are millennials who are genuinely hopeful, who aren't, they don't come from the sponsored by, Exxon camp, what I mean? But it's, I just love this discussion because it really it redefines our idea of counterculture. I consider myself to be a member of the counterculture, and just the word counterculture means the other culture, opposed to. Anti-authoritarian, you are the counter, you are against the grain. And anything that you look at as a source of authoritarianism is automatically, that's the culture. So you're the counterculture. And just erasing that whole idea, it doesn't have to be that way.
Agreed.
Yeah. And I think it's the same in politics. I know.
You're right. You're right. And that's why it was interesting for me to catch my own bias there. And I think that bias has just come from just being repeatedly disappointed.
I know.
And it's just that kind of feeling like, fuck, like I'm so team people. And like to see that politics has really let people down at pretty much every step. It's like
not every step in recent history.
Every step in recent history.
Yeah. That's why I'm still kind of a believer. It's not a very popular belief, but I'm kind of a believer in policy. I'm a big scholar of the American Revolution and the original ideas behind Did you see
the play Hamilton?
I did.
It's fucking incredible.
So great.
It's so great.
Amazing.
I mean, I still listen to that soundtrack and get fired up. So I guess if I go back far enough.
Yeah, if you go back far enough. I mean, those guys, with all of their problems aside, obviously, I mean, you can't ignore, the low-hanging fruit, the slavery and stuff like that. But, at that time, it was an emperor of China, a king of France, a king of England, a shogun of Japan, king of Spain. And these guys really wanted to disrupt the whole system because they saw the monarchy, and just, the pin-headed monarchy as the ultimate form of tyranny.
Yeah.
And so the idea of America, so, I mean, one could make a case that America is a failed state because we have not lived up to that at all,
The story isn't done yet.
But the story's not done. But there's enough elasticity within the structure of America to redefine our story.
And what's interesting, looking forward, if I put on my optimistic lens towards politics, I think one of the reasons that politics has been so shitty is it's been so steered and controlled by mainstream media, because like the ability, like what the media will show as the debate, where they select two people and just prop up just these are the two parts. It kind of creates this lack of competition that's, and I think that's starting to shift because media is being decentralized right now. And I think there's room for some people to have massive like YouTube campaigns and YouTube debates and disrupt this kind of what's on CNN are our choices kind of mentality. And I think when that happens, then I think and third-party candidates become viable and then other people become viable and people start to lose the identities, and hopefully this happens, where they start to lose the identities of Republican and Democrat and just look at the people and the policies that they support rather than blue and red and elephants and donkeys or whatever the fuck symbols people want to have about themselves.
Donkeys and elephants and shit.
Yeah. And just then at that point, like, all right, maybe we can get some real solid people in there.
And I think we will. I mean, I think, using the media, I mean, I was surprised in the last election how much influence the mainstream media still had. That still kind of, maybe I'm naive, but I was surprised that, CNN still had that much pull.
But it's on the decline.
It is on the decline, but I had already thought it was on the decline. And there will be a candidate in some form or another, maybe it's not presidential, but who will fuck all of that. Podcasts only, YouTube campaigns only.
Totally.
That's it. I'm going on Aubrey Marcus's show, Joe Rogan's show, and that's it. That's our funnel. And you're going to talk to the people. And if you do the numbers, it adds up. I mean, you can reach just as many eyeballs.
Agreed.
I mean,
and that's coming. You know what? You've made me optimistic about politics here, Zach. Look at you go. That's like the last fucking bastion of negativity in my fucking mind. And there it is. Now I'm optimistic again.
Well, good. I'm an optimist in that arena. Mainly for the reason that, all of this data that we get thrown at us around like polling, especially around polling, people who support the current administration, that is not the majority of the country. They are just centralized, well mobilized. They have one television network that is their propaganda channel. They're on point. Their message is unified. So they are a very powerful silent minority, but they all vote. They all get together. Whereas in the schisms of all the other cultures, there were 90 million people who could have voted who didn't on the last election. 90 million. I mean, that's such a huge number. So the majority of our country, it's looking for a voice. It's looking for.
Well, also the other problem is like you want those 90 million to vote. Well, don't have them vote against somebody. Have them vote for somebody.
Yeah, they're
looking
for something.
Because everybody was voting against somebody.
Yeah.
In this election, it's like you're either against Trump or you're against Hillary.
Yeah.
Like who's voting for anybody? Like nobody. People were voting for Bernie, but he didn't fucking make it.
But he didn't.
He was like the only person that people are actually voting for.
Yeah.
And I think that's the problem. Like you want to get people off their ass. Like, all right, give them something to get fucking inspired about.
That is the problem. And looking for a centralized message that can inspire, this group, this disenfranchised group. Maybe it's psychedelics.
Yeah, live cameras as our politician does ayahuasca.
That could be it, man.
Like you want some transparent. You want to see this dude? Like let's see.
That could
let's
be
see.
It.
Look in the fucking mirror for 20. Look in the camera for 24 hours on a boga, just like they do for their ritual. Full 24-hour boga, live streaming questions. You get to ask them whatever the fuck you want. Like, all right, you want to put somebody through the test? You want to trust them after that? Like, all right, there we go.
That is awesome.
And maybe that will be the disruptive thing. Maybe somebody's like, listen, I'm going to do the most intense psychedelic possible in the traditional Bwiti ritual where you look in the mirror and I'm going to look right in the camera and I'm going to field live questions. Like, here we go.
Ask me anything.
Ask me anything.
Nothing is off limits.
Nothing is off limits.
Oh, shit.
You know? And then see. You know, can you imagine that if like one of the legit candidates just decided to do that? Everybody would fucking tune in. Down there in Gabon, just in Gabon on Wi-Fi, just like, here I am. Let's go. I mean, something like that could shift everything.
It could shift everything.
You know,
and that could shift everything. And I'm still looking, and I'm still a believer in that there could be something that could really inspire the people on, you know, one big centralized, like in the 60s, you know, the kids got really inspired. Because there's, you know, I mean, the Beatles are pretty inspiring. Bob Dylan, Jimi Hendrix are pretty fucking mind blowing. You know what I mean? Like, who's going to be that today?
21 Savage. Do you even know who that is?
No.
He's a rapper. I like surfing to his music, but he's not going to probably be inspiring the people. Raps mostly about M's in his bank account. And
is it good? It's good music.
I mean, I like it for what it is. But you're right. There's not like, you know, a really strong, but you get like anomalous kind of messages that come through, and Childish Gambino put out a fucking great song. Exactly.
It's insane. That video is.
Yeah, exactly. So you'll get something like that'll get people like, whoa.
When I watched that video, it for the first time, it shows a lot about where my head is at these days, but it already had 265 million views. I was like, oh shit, I'm a little late to this.
Yeah.
265 million views.
I mean, that is
but it's great, though.
Art and,
it is
and
art.
Politics. And that's, you know, that's the beautiful thing about someone who can take a stage like that and make something significant. And then it's just pointing that towards, instead of just pointing at the shit, actually draw people to the light. And I think that's what's missing.
Did you say you listen to music when you surf?
Yeah.
You do?
On behind the boat, like wake surf.
Oh, wake surfing. Okay.
Yeah.
Because you live in Texas.
I live in Texas.
Right.
So we make our own waves and surf them.
Where's the surf ranch? Where's Kelly Slater's surf ranch?
That's like in the middle of California out here.
Oh, I thought it was in Texas.
We have a surf ranch in Texas. We have 2 surf ranches in Texas that are pretty fucking dope. But they're still not as cool as surfing behind the boat, because then you get your music and you get hanging out, and it's the vibe.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I just saw something on Kelly Slater's, you know, that surf ranch. I thought it was in Texas or something.
No, that's a great wave though. It's like $10,000 to go surf it though.
Oh, is it?
It's like crazy. But yeah, it's they had a surf competition there.
Yeah, right.
Like a full pro
it's,
surf competition.
It's the perfect wave. So as a surfer, do you think this is a good thing? Because I have always interpreted surfing as, you know, you're looking for that perfect wave. And when you find that perfect wave, when you get it and wherever break you're going to, then that's sort of part of the rush. And that's part of the experience, is your relationship with, you know, Mother Nature. So if you're just going to this ranch and you push a button, you get the perfect wave. I know the sport is still, you know, cool, and the skill on that wave is still cool. But I don't know. And I'm a technologist.
Well,
I'm a total futurist.
I think you got to look at these as 2 different things. I think you look at, like, you know, what's going to preclude you from ever getting the perfect wave? Not knowing how to fucking surf.
Right.
And you just get chundered in the whitewater on what could have been the perfect wave. So use these as fun ways to practice, like hone your game, get better, and have like reps, because those waves come every 2 minutes. So you just get reps. Stand up, stand up, stand up, stand up, carve, stand up, carve. Right. You know, like that's what you get to practice. And then if you do enjoy the spiritual element of being in the ocean and being connected and waiting for that perfect ride and that experience that can only come, you know, as this combination of being tuned into nature herself, like you'll be more equipped and you'll be better equipped to do that.
Yeah.
So I think you just got to look at them separate.
Because wiping out does suck.
Yeah.
On a big wave.
Yeah.
A lot.
For sure. For sure. Especially if it's a reef break. Yeah.
Wait, so you wakeboard? Is that?
Wake surf.
Wake surf. Mm-hmm. So wait.
You got to come out to Austin, man.
Okay. Yeah.
So you're basically, you get started on a rope.
Okay.
And then the wave is going, and then you throw the rope in the boat. So you're just on the board surfing the wave behind the boat, going about 11 miles an hour.
Oh, okay, cool. And you throw the rope back. So how long's your ride?
As long as you want. You can ride infinitely. You could ride 30 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Oh,
because
wow,
the
I've got
momentum
it.
of going downhill on the wave
Yeah.
keeps you at speed, and then you can carve and do turns. And I can't do 360s or anything, but you can do little jumps, and it's really fucking
And
fun.
you're on like on a shortboard?
Yeah, it's kind of like it's a very short surfboard. Yeah, more
Okay.
like a wake surf.
I've got to check this
kind of
out. I mean, I've
surfboard.
water skied, but I've never done this. That sounds pretty cool. I like it.
Yeah, it's dope. It's dope. But I think, I think you're right. I think now is that Childish Gambino song was like it's like a good little kind of like,
It made me feel good. It did.
This is fucking interesting here. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
this reached mass culture. And like I was saying, I think the thing is like that pointed out a lot of the shadow.
Yeah.
But the thing that if you can do that and then point to the light as well,
Yeah.
like really get people feeling positive, not just being like, yeah, it's fucked up.
Right.
Like that's
Got to give solutions.
exactly.
You
And
do.
that's the last piece that's really missing, I think, and to a certain degree. And there are some really conscious musicians that are putting out some interesting messages, like Nako Bear, for example.
No,
and,
there
and
are.
different- And,
I like
and they're
Nako.
starting to gain in popularity. But I think to really crack that full mainstream, I think getting like hip hop and rock and some other people involved is going to that'll be really interesting.
But it's such a different world now, and media fragmentation. I mean, it's sort of a weird argument to make, being someone, I'm a technologist and I worked in the music business for years as well, but there was something to be said about the old way of putting out records, because there were only a few touch points. So if something was really good, like everyone would know. It's not so easy these days. I know the Childish Gambino thing is a good example, but somebody could put out a really great album and nobody knows because there's no way to get it. How are you going to find out? Like when, new Led Zeppelin album came out, or the new Steely Dan album came out, or the new NWA record came out. I mean, it was fucking everywhere.
But there was also
dude.
people
It was
who
on
just
point.
couldn't get a voice at all. Like you watch that documentary,
that's
Sugar
the other
Man.
side. Yeah.
Like homie was fucking killing it.
Yeah.
Like his music
there's
was
that too.
incredible, soulful. And just the record labels are like, nah.
Yep.
And then,
of course.
so he winds up as the hero in South Africa, oddly enough. But great documentary for anybody interested. It's called Sugar Man. But
amazing.
yeah,
There's
it's just
that side too, no
that's
doubt.
the other. I mean, at least this has a little bit more of this egalitarian thing where at least they got a shot, where like things are showing up in Spotify and new artists are getting listens and stuff is starting to catch, or like YouTube is will start to catch if you put it off.
I'm just want to make sure we catch, the next Jimi Hendrix doesn't go unnoticed. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Because there's some incredibly talented artists that you're like, how are you not famous? I've definitely seen that.
But when I go to Austin, when I go to Austin, some of those bars there, I'm like, how are you guys? What the hell? How come I've never heard of you? They're so good.
Right. So parting words.
Yeah, man. No,
Talk to the people, Zach.
Parting words. Setting. Mm-hmm. Vote. Even if it kills you, do it. You got to vote. It's incremental. Find a good new band. Let everyone know about it.
Yep.
Yeah. That's my issue with music. It's like I need people to, I'm not sure where to go anymore these days. And I've become that guy again, listening to old stuff, So setting, vote, find a good new band, let people know.
People hit up Zach with the new. get him
What's
keen
the
on
new
that
shit,
new.
man?
What's the new shit?
Yeah.
He'll come back if he listen to all kinds of new albums.
And listen to the Maps podcast and my podcast too.
And support Maps.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, cool.
It's been a pleasure, man.
Yeah, it's fun. Thanks.
Good to
man.
have you on. Thanks,
Yeah.
brother.
Right.
See you later, everybody. Peace.